Okay, so it's time for us to go ahead and get back into our coverage over the Avengers. And so we're still covering Kurt Busiek and George Perez run on the Avengers. Now, with that being said, we do pick up with a four-part storyline. Takes place in issues number 19, 20, 21, and 22. Now, with this four-part storyline, you can kind of tell that for Kurt Busiek, he was slowly kind of building up to it, the idea of bringing back Ultron into the world of Avengers comics. And the reason why I said it like that, because remember, this Avengers series is still picking up right after the idea of Heroes Reborn. And Heroes Reborn was when you had Marvel try to bring some life back into some characters by pushing those characters into a different reality. I'm not going to sit down, re-explain the whole idea of like Heroes Reborn because I have done it a lot in previous videos. But anyways, when it came to Kurt Busiek and also like George Perez, they kind of want to get the Avengers back on track when they came over to Marvel to work on this series. And Ultron is a major factor when it comes to the idea of the Avengers. Now, when it comes to the opening pages of the storyline, we actually pick up at the Wakanda Design Group plant that's in Long Island. And the reason why, because when it came to Tony Stark's company no longer being officially his at the moment, you didn't have Wakanda Design Group come in and start being the ones to create the Quinjets the Avengers use on different types of missions. But the problem is right now, this plant is currently being attacked by an unknown force. Now, you do have Black Panther arrive at the scene of the crime. Now, we're kind of left to believe at first that this is Ultron coming here for a particular goal. I'm going to tell you right now, it's actually not him at all. It's someone else who does play a somewhat important role for this storyline, but a later storyline down the road. But for Black Panther, they are really surprised to see this person. But now we're able to switch over to the Avengers, right? Now, when it comes to the Avengers, you have most of them there at Avengers Mansion. And really, they're getting ready for a press conference. Now, the Scarlet Witch, Wonder Man, and Vision are currently not there at the moment. As a matter of fact, this kind of leads into a different storyline I'm going to talk about here in a moment. But when it comes to the Avengers, Firestar and Justice are officially moving in at the moment. Also, Justice is sidelined at the moment. And the reason why, because he got injured in our last video. But also on top of that, for the Avengers, this press conference is about to go south very quickly. But before we're able to officially sit down and talk about the idea of the press conference, we switch over to the Scarlet Witch and Wonder Man. Now, they're at this cafe where the Scarlet Witch is able to celebrate her culture in many different ways, in a very beautiful dance. And while she's doing that, and once she is done, you then have Wonder Man bring up the fact that his brother, the Grim Reaper, had officially been, well, broken out of prison. Now, at first, they kind of believe that he broke out with somebody else and most likely will come back down the road to hurt the Avengers. But really, the idea of his brother missing is really important for this storyline. But you then had a Scarlet Witch realize that there was somebody else at the cafe. She saw Vision, but in his human disguise. Now, she asked the owner, how long has he been there? And apparently the Vision been there before Wonder Man and the Scarlet Witch had arrived. But on top of that, apparently he's been going there for the last few months. And for the Scarlet Witch, she remembers that the Vision does remember a lot of things about their relationship in the past. And so it's her kind of wondering if he's still kind of lingering or holding on to the idea of possibly them getting back together. Who knows? Now, we are able to switch back over to the press conference, right? And this kind of goes back to what we saw in an earlier storyline. And let me explain. You see, when it came to the Avengers, they were trying their best to find a character known as Lord Templar. Now, while trying to find Lord Templar, they realized that all the different clues or trails they were following led back over to the triune understanding. And the triune understanding is a new concept around this time in Marvel Comics where their main goal is to help people reach their full potential as a human being. And that could be mentally or even physically. Now, the thing is, though, when the Avengers had arrived at the new base for the triune understanding, when they asked to look around, the organization told the Avengers no. But then you had another character arrive, better known as Pagan or Pagan. Either way, for the Avengers, it's kind of like, hey, listen, we're not trying to hate on their religion or hate what they stand for, but at the same time, it does seem kind of weird that they would not allow us to try to clear their name or figure out what is their connection to Lord Templar. And there is one. But when it comes to the reporters, they're trying to paint this picture of the Avengers of being like this superhero team, not trying to respect other people's cultures or religions or other things. Now, in the middle of the press conference, you didn't have the Wasp arrive, and she's freaking out. And the reason why, because, well, this kind of brings us what we saw in a previous video, the idea of Ultron kidnapping Hank Pym. And so once you do have the Wasp inform the Avengers what happened to Hank Pym, you then have Jarvis walk into the room. Now, when he does, it's him informing the Avengers what's happening over at Black Panther's facility. And the robot there apparently is made out of adamantium. And they believe it has to be Ultron. And so while you have the Avengers on their way over to where Black Panther facility is at, you did have Firestar kind of ask about more information about Ultron. And so this allows the Avengers to kind of help her get caught up to speed. So you have the Avengers say, okay, listen, when it comes to Ultron, as we all know, Hank Pym was the one who had created Ultron. Now, Ultron had came back many times, but there was one point in time where he came back with a body full of adamantium. But also he had created other characters over the years, like Vision, for example, his son, or Jocasta, his first bride. And let's not forget about his second bride, and that would be Alchema. Now, Alchema was the second bride whose brain patterns was built off Mockingbird. But anyways, when the Avengers arrive at Black Panther's facility, well, they kind of find out it is Alchema who's the one currently attacking the facility, the second bride to Ultron. Now, when it comes to Alchema, we have to remember that her and Ultron, they never truly saw eye to eye with one another. And the reason why, because, well, Homegirl loves violence. Like, she just loves killing. And that right there kind of changed the idea of Ultron trying to make her be his second bride. There were a few other things with that, but it's the idea that now she's here, and for the Avengers, they're kind of wondering if she's working with Ultron. But she says, listen, that's not happening, because just in case you've forgotten, me and him could not see eye to eye. But she also tells the Avengers that she does know like where he is. But at first, the Avengers do struggle to fight against someone who almost at par with Ultron. Now, the Avengers do win, but only because the Scarlet Witch does come in at the very last second, using her hex magic to bring down Alchema. But here's the problem, though, because you can kind of tell here that for Alchema, she allowed the Scarlet Witch to win. Because, again, she has bigger plans down the road. But she does tell the Avengers, if you're trying your best to find Ultron, then turn on to CNN right now. Because I feel like he's doing something really big at the moment to kind of tell you guys where he is at. And that is when you have the Avengers find out that for Ultron, he is in a different country. And matter of fact, he wiped out almost everything in that country, better known as Florinia. And so you have this reporter on CNN just saying like, hey guys, look at this footage right here. Things are popping off in this country. The army tried their best to step in, but unfortunately, they all got wiped out. And then at the very last second in the shadows, we can see the body of Ultron, where of course with the Avengers, they definitely now know where he is at. And they're kind of like, oh my God, look at what Ultron did. He had officially wiped out an entire country. But again, they don't know what his actual plan is just yet. And so as we dive into issue number 20, we're really kind of learning more about what went down when it came to Ultron attacking Slovenia. And honestly, it was a beatdown because you are talking about the idea of a country just throwing everything they had at Ultron. First, it was the tanks and also the troops. They were not really able to take on Ultron. Then you had the Black Brigade go in there, a character Iron Man had fought against in the past. He was also defeated very easily. You also had Ember go in there as well, another character who was also defeated as well, but that character was really more based around magic. And so for our heroes, what they're seeing right now was just Ultron doing everything he can against this country and being able to easily wipe out the entire country. And so now you have other governments wanting to get involved. Russia, China, America, like everyone's kind of freaking out because Ultron is basically saying that this country will be the birthplace to his new race that he's trying to bring into this world. Now, they do have his second bride, but she's not talking at the moment. The idea of like what Ultron is planning. But at the same time, we have to remember when it comes to her, her and Ultron, they didn't see eye to eye. So we can kind of tell right off the bat that they're not really working together at all. But she does know like what Ultron is trying to achieve. Now, this kind of leads into the Wasp, Scarlet Witch, and also Wonder Man going over to the lab where Hank Pym was working at. Now, one of the people that he was working with is somewhat important for like the character of Hank Pym, but honestly, not that important for the storyline. But anyways, when you do have our three heroes walk in, you did have Wonder Man mention that the idea that his brother is also missing is most likely now looking like possibly that the Grim Reaper was kidnapped like Hank Pym was. Because when they walk into the lab of Hank Pym and see the destruction that was left behind by Ultron, is somewhat similar to what happened to Grim Reaper's cell. Now, with all that being said, you had a Scarlet Witch wanting to talk to Vision about the idea of him appearing at the cafe that her and Wonder Man were at, but you did have her realize that the Wasp is kind of going through a lot. Because the man she loved is currently missing. But it's also the fact that, okay, for the Wasp, she blames herself for the mental health of Hank Pym. Now, technically, no, she's not at fault here. It's the idea the man needed help, but unfortunately did not get that help he needed. Because for Hank Pym, he did lose a wife, and that did a huge effect to his mental health. But on top of that, it's the idea of Ultron. When he created Ultron and saw what Ultron became, he literally blamed himself over and over again for the idea of Ultron. But then even on top of that, there was a point in time where he was testing some kind of gas that affected his mind to the point where he believed that he was somebody else completely, better known as Yellow Jacket, and he believed that with him being somebody else, that he had murdered Hank Pym himself. He also did propose to the Wasp. Now, she did marry him, but she's kind of hoping that it would keep his mental health, where it was at before it fallen down even worse, where it was at that point in time. Now, with them being married and Hank Pym slowly coming back, their marriage began to crumble. But also the idea that for the Wasp, what she wanted Hank Pym to do was open up to her more. And for Hank, he couldn't do that. And she kind of felt like she forced it onto him and kind of began this change in him that could possibly make things worse for him when it came to his mental health. Now, we're going to learn also here that there was a big secret that Hank Pym never told the Wasp or really anybody else. But you have Vision warn the Avengers who are there with him, like, hey, we got some trouble coming, like right now. And honestly, he was correct because out of nowhere, you have all these different versions of Ultrons from the past just pop up, an army of them just coming at Vision, the Scarlet Witch, the Wasp, and Wonder Man. And really, you will believe that kind of team right there, minus the Wasp, that they should be able to handle this army, but they easily get overrun and they all become prisoners of Ultron as he takes them away. Now, for the rest of the Avengers, they have no idea what exactly happened to the Scarlet Witch or, Vision, Wonder Man, and Wasp. Because for Iron Man, Firestar, Black Panther, Thor, and Captain America, they're all heading over to Sarnia to go to war, basically, with the army of soldiers from different countries to hopefully bring down Ultron once and for all. Now, for Justice, he won't be there with them because, again, he was sidelined because injuries from a previous storyline. But for him, he tells Jarvis, I want to do research on every single time Ultron had appeared in the past. And really, going back over to Serenia, we do see that in the base of Ultron, with him now having Vision, Wonder Man, Scarlet Witch, Hank Pym, the Wasp, and yes, we can now confirm he also has the Grim Reaper. He plans to use them as a way to bring in his new race into the world of Marvel Comics. And that leads us into issue number 21. Now, as we dive into issue number 21, we see the Avengers who are, fighting with the army of soldiers at the moment, just fighting against these zombies that were basically used by Serenia to kind of help protect the country. These zombies have been given cybernetic body parts to kind of make them fight for the country. Anyways, you do have the Avengers just going out of their way to hopefully bring them down. Now, for Firestar and Black Panther, their main goal is to hopefully find Ultron because once they're able to officially defeat Ultron, they should be able then to save the day. But speaking of Ultron, we do learn what Ultron is technically up to. Now, when it comes to Ultron, what he is trying to achieve is build a brand new hive mind off the brand new system that Hank Pym had basically built. It's the idea that for Ultron, when he does bring in his new race, they'll all be connected to a hive mind that he will basically control. Not done just yet, because the reason why he chose these 6 characters is all because of them being family. You see, Hank Pym, his father. The Wasp, his mother. The Vision, well, his son. The Scarlet Witch, kind of like a daughter-in-law because she did marry the Vision. Wonder Man's mind was used to help create the Vision's mind. And the Grim Reaper, that was Ultron's first true-on human ally. And so with all of these 6 different characters, he's going to use their personalities as a way to make different kinds of personalities for the brand new race that Ultron is trying to bring into the world. But at the same time, still being able to control all of them with their minds being connected to a hive mind with him being in charge of it. Now, you do have Ultron leave, and the reason why, because Ultron had just realized that, well, the other members of the Avengers, like Black Panther, Firestar, Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America, well, they had arrived and fighting against his forces. So for Ultron, it's kind of time for him to go ahead and handle business on the surface. So he goes to fight against the Avengers. Now, we had to switch back over to Virginia, and the reason why, because at this military base, we get reminded that Alchema is being, kept there, locked up. And the problem is right now, her children are on their way to break her free. And matter of fact, in a few panels, we do see that they are able to break her free. So this begins the process of her trying to make her own game plan. But when we do switch back over to the Avengers, well, they're struggling at the moment. And the reason why, because let's not forget, Ultron's body is made out of adamantium. So for our heroes, when they try to use all their different attacks, they're not really able to break through like they're kind of hoping to. But with that being said, when it comes to Black Panther, one of his energy daggers were technically able to kind of cut through Ultron's armor shell and hit him right in the eye. Now, when it comes to, well, justice, let's not forget that basically he stayed behind to hopefully find a way to bring down Ultron. And so we see him currently just going through all the recent times Ultron had appeared over time in Marvel Comics. Like, for example, the idea where you had Ultron attack and fought against Daredevil, or the Doctor Doom situation. Like, it's him trying his best to learn everything he can about Ultron, but also find the best way to officially bring down Ultron as well. Now, we do switch back over to our heroes. And we see our heroes fighting against the latest version of Ultron, Ultron 16. And the reason why I'm saying that because, okay, for our heroes, with them trying their best to battle against Ultron 16, when they get to that point where they find a way to like destroy Ultron 16, for our heroes, they believe at first that they had officially won, that they had officially brought down Ultron once and for all. That right there is a problem. And the reason why, because out of nowhere, you then have Ultron 17 appear. And it doesn't stop there because then you have Ultron 23 appear. And it's like, wait a second, what in the world is going on here? And then at the very last second, Ultron 458 appear. And it's like, okay, Ultron has been building up an army of himself and possibly other robots to use against the Avengers. But right now, it does seem like all hope is lost. It does seem like Ultron might officially win. And so, as we transition into like the final chapter of this storyline, what we're truly picking up with now is just the Avengers trying their best to survive, the army of Ultrons just coming at them at all different angles. And really, it does kind of seem like the Avengers might officially lose this battle. But back at Avengers Mansion, you have Jarvis be woken up by one of the alarms that was set at Avengers Mansion where there's trouble. And of course, it's the idea the bride of Ultron had escaped her prison. But the thing is, for Jarvis, he should be the last one be alerted about that. And so he's kind of like, where in the world is Justice? Justice has snuck out once again and basically flying over to where the Avengers is at because he believes that he might have a way to bring down Ultron. But as we do switch back over to the Avengers, this is where we learn like what is the big secret that Hank Pym is currently holding on to. All right, y'all, here it is. So for many years, we have known that Hank Pym was the one who had created Ultron. But in reality, for Hank Pym, he uses his own brain patterns to build the mind of Ultron. And so for Ultron, he is thinking, he is acting like Hank Pym without any human regards at all in the mind of Ultron. Now, that right there becomes very important. We also see Ultron downloading the different personalities of the different people he has right now as prisoners. Now, I kind of want to go ahead and skip over a few pages and get over to Vision trying to work with Ultron. Because for Vision, he has evolved since the last time Ultron has seen him. And so for Vision, he's able to hack into the computer system that Ultron had built, but also being able to like project himself to communicate with Ultron. And so it's Vision saying, I understand what's going on with you. Your problem is that you're alone. It's the anger inside of you. You were created without no actual purpose. Now, it's also Vision saying, what truly helped me was finding love. And love can help battle the pain that you're currently feeling. And the thing is, I try my best to block out that thing, love, but I realize you truly can't. Now, this is Vision speaking from the heart. And it's him saying, Wanda, like, hey, I still love you. And I want to be with you. So please, please just leave Wonder Man for me, girl. But it's also him trying to buy some time because he knows that Ultron will not really bite the bait. Like, it's not Ultron being like, hey, you know what? You're right, Vision. All I needed was love. That's why I created you and Jocasta and my other bride, because I was lonely. It was the anger. No, for Ultron, he's like, man, forget love. I almost cursed right there. It's Ultron saying, nah, I'm going to take you out now. But it's Vision saying, okay, yeah, I kind of knew it wouldn't work. But at the same time, I was just trying my best to buy some time. Because what Vision did was he helped release the Grim Reaper. And with the Grim Reaper now being free, you didn't have him being able to release the rest of the Avengers who are currently prisoners. And so now you got a full-on battle. And luckily for the Avengers, the rest of their team arrives just in time. The problem is that it's Ultron. Like, he made sure that he would be able to battle against all the different members of the Avengers, except at the very last second, you have Justice arrive. His game plan goes into motion here. Because what you had Justice do was basically bring over Antarctic vibranium. Now, Antarctic vibranium is basically anti-metal. It has the idea of dissolving all types of metal it technically hits. And so, when it comes to adamantium, it does not stand a chance at all. And for Hank Pym, that is perfect to bring down, well, Ultron. And so we get into the end of the storyline where you have Ultron be defeated by Hank Pym. Hank Pym. When it comes to Hank just beating down on Ultron, but is Hank just releasing all that anger he had inside of him for himself, but also for Ultron? Because every time Ultron had killed somebody, Hank Pym blamed himself. Every time Ultron did something evil, Hank Pym blamed himself. And so right now it's him just being able to let out all of that anger he had inside his body. Now, once he does all of that, you didn't have the Avengers technically go home. But for the Avengers, especially Wasp, she kind of realized what has been going on in the mind of Hank Pym. Now, once you do have the Avengers leave, you didn't have Alchema appear. Now, Alchema, she appears to pick up the chips that you had Ultron use to download the personalities of the different prisoners he had in his storyline, which means now she's then able to pick up where Ultron had left off at when it came to his master plan. But this is where we're going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see you all next time. Later.